Welcome to Kapapala Ranch. Kapapala is located on the southwestern slope of the Big Island of Hawaii, just outside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. The ranch runs for over 14 miles along the highway and covers about 34,000 acres. In 1977, Gordon Cran bought the lease for Kapapala, but his history with the ranch didn't start there. In 1952, as a young man, Gordon spent 4 years working here while it was under C. Brewer's ownership. His wife, Genevieve Cran, also had a historical connection, as her grandfather was born and raised on the ranch, while his father was the foreman here in the 1880s. With Lonnie's son Alex, the family connection spans 6 generations. At the time of the purchase, the ranch was in rough shape with very little fencing, lots of wild cattle, and very limited and unreliable water sources. While George Washington was president, the first cattle arrived in Hawaii with Captain Vancouver. He presented King Kamehameha with 6 cows and a bull. To allow them to multiply, the king put a kapu on the killing of the cattle. A decade later, Richard Cleveland, an American trader, brought the first horse to Hawaii and presented the animal as a gift to King Kamehameha I. This was a year before Lewis and Clark began their expedition to explore the Louisiana Purchase and the Pacific Northwest. In 1830, the cattle, both wild and domestic, had multiplied to a dangerous level, doing damage to crops, forests, and native vegetation, so King Kamehameha III lifted the kapu on the killing of cattle. Salt beef was a staple for the whaling ships that had begun to arrive a decade before. In 1832, Kamehameha III invited Mexican vaqueros from California to teach Hawaiians in managing the wild livestock, which led to the development of the paniolo, or Hawaiian cowboy. For comparison, about this time, the first wagons were crossing the Continental Divide on the Oregon Trail. Now that you have a little background on Hawaii ranching, let's get to Kapapala Ranch. In 1860, when Abraham Lincoln was elected president, Kapapala was leased to William Reed and Charles Richardson by King Kamehameha IV. This picture of the ranch headquarters was taken in the late 1800s. The main house is mid-photo in the eucalyptus grove. The cowboy houses are to the right of the photo and the stone corrals to the far left and center. The camp was built in 1860 and was fully self-sustaining. Cattle, pigs, and chickens were raised, and there was a dairy and a slaughterhouse. A full-time gardener raised all the fruits and vegetables for 8 to 10 families. The main buildings are, for the most part, still standing. In 1877, C. Brewer had purchased the lease. The company ran extensive sugarcane land, and the ranch was a bit of a side business on the lands that were poor, too far from the sugar mill, or otherwise unsuitable for sugar production. Makakupu Tunnel was one of 66 tunnels constructed in the 1920s to provide large volumes of water for fluming sugarcane out of the fields and downslope to the sugar mill. The tunnel also provided water to the ranch even as early as 1930, traversing well over 25 miles downslope in pipes. The tunnel has over 4,000 feet of tributaries funneling to the single manifold that sends water into a pipe that catapults down the canyon 400 feet below. In the late 1920s, Makakupu put forth 500,000 gallons of water per day, but earthquakes and floods have reduced the output to approximately 30,000 gallons per day, or 10 million gallons of water per year. Around World War II, the internal combustion engine would change the scope of sugar cultivation. Trucks allowed cane to be grown higher than the flumes. Bulldozers and graders were capable of building roads so that fields could be cultivated miles from the mill. The plantation no longer relied on water flumes to move cane out of the fields and down to the mill. In the late 1940s, Plantation Field Superintendent Bud Larson lamented with ranch manager Howley Sumner that he didn't know how the ranch would survive with all the good ranching lands being taken away and moved to sugar production. As trucks and equipment began to move freely through the ranch, so did invasives that thrived, spreading rampantly and further reducing usable grazing area. More fertile lands were being removed for sugar, leaving marginal land for cattle. The ranch was in financial distress and went up for sale. Parker Ranch brought C. Brewer's interests in Kau in 1975 to ensure a steady stream of cattle to its feedlot and packing house. In a very short time, Parker Ranch gave up on Kapapala and put it up for sale in less than 2 years, leaving the Crans as the new owners in 1977. In the last 43 years, there have been many changes at Kapapala. The trifecta of ranching, fences, feed, and water remain a constant challenge. In the early years, all the ranch water came from Makakupu Tunnel, which is located up behind the ranch on a sheer valley wall. While it is an engineering marvel, it was also subject to damage from earthquakes and floods and required a complex delivery system. Pumps were once needed to distribute water to areas above 3,400 feet in elevation, which was costly in terms of man-hours and fuel expense. A 6-year-plus project started with a vision of a high-altitude reservoir that could gravity feed water to the whole ranch. Planning started in 2006 and construction in 2008. Building Kaniwai was a huge project in every way, from planning to labor to cost. From engineering to permits to the number of volunteers who came over the years, the project was a Herculean task. The logistics of materials and supplies to a site that is over an hour by four-wheel drive was staggering. Fuel, food, shelter, supplies, tools and materials, worker housing, the challenges were endless. The reservoir was completed in 2011. It was named Kaniwai and blessed in 2012. The adjacent catchment, which would keep it full, was finished in 2013. Being able not to depend on pumps and to be able to gravity flow water to all areas of the ranch has been a game changer. Plus that, we like to go up there and have a little fun. Wherever you find someone out and about at Kapapala, there will be dogs close by. Working dogs are a big part of the team here at the ranch and do the work of many cowboys, sorting and herding and finding cattle in thick brush. The dogs are a mix of several popular herding breeds and are for the most part bred and trained here on the ranch. We simply could not do our jobs without our canine partners. Several times a year, different herds are gathered for branding. This allows us to check the health of the cattle. The calves are branded, ear tagged, given their shots, and bull calves are castrated. A minute later, they're back on their way to pair up with their mamas. Cowboys and helpers from other ranches and friends come by to work with the cattle, roping and working on the calves as well as preparing food to feed 50 to 80 people. It's a time for young men and women to learn and practice skills to become tomorrow's stockmen. It's a lot of work, but many hands make light work, and we all enjoy the fellowship.
Oh, never mind, keina pu hiki no. Oh, never mind, keina pu hiki no. O mau kau kau ko kaulairi.
Several herds of goats are kept on the ranch, overseen by 2 to 3 herders who live in mobile housing near the herd, and guard dogs who live with the herd to protect them from pigs and wild dogs. In addition to being raised for meat, they are grazed intensively for brush control and to battle invasive species by moving electric netting fence to make new paddocks every few days. There is a state game bird season where the ranch is open for bird hunting on weekends and holidays. The ranch provides staff for the hunter checking station at Ainapo. In addition, we provide year-round managed access through the ranch on 3 roads to the forest reserves above the ranch for mammal hunting and other public recreation. The endangered nene, an endemic goose exclusive to the Hawaiian Islands, thrives here on the ranch. Their favorite places are the reservoirs and the areas recently grazed by cattle. Koa is a beautiful tree endemic to Hawaii with beautiful wood sought after by craftsmen. While koa is not rare, large trees are, and there are many programs statewide in progress to assure a supply of koa for generations to come. Kapapala has many areas where koa grows and some areas with large trees. While cattle love the young trees, with managed grazing they are an asset to keeping the understory grasses in check in areas with larger trees. In August of 2018, a fire started on a neighboring property and strong winds quickly brought it to the edge of the ranch. Our employees and volunteers fought relentlessly round the clock for several days to keep the fire contained to a very few acres on the edge of the property. We relocated our bulldozer within hours of the start of the fire, and our ranch water system was used extensively by county, state, and federal firefighters as they worked in the neighboring national park and private lands. From 2008 to 2018, Halima'uma'u erupted vigorously. Here at headquarters, we are 14 miles from the crater, but the nearest point of the ranch is just 2.5 miles away. While the lava stayed contained in the crater, sulfur dioxide and other volcanic gases and high levels of particulate matter were steadily ejected into the air. These gases have caused us a multitude of problems over the last decade, with major challenges in animal health and rapid deterioration of anything metal. The hub of many of our activities these days is our airplane hangar. The sugar plantations fertilized a lot of the sugar that once grew on the ranch with crop dusters. With 2 airstrips on the property, we can use our Piper Cub to check water tanks, lines and troughs, fences, livestock locations, and general ranch welfare in a very short time. Without the plane, it means loading an ATV or UTV into a trailer, driving to the end of the ranch, and then spending another hour to get to a trough, pipeline, or fence that needs checking. We also monitor trespassing and illegal hunting and search for overdue hikers or hunters. We use drones for similar situations closer to home with the added benefit of getting pictures. It's our eye in the sky for many situations. Helicopters are contracted for other jobs like moving water pipes to remote locations and spraying invasive weeds. Thank you for visiting us today at Kapapala.